everyone, welcome back to my channel, True Crime with Jess Rose. How you all doing? I don't know about you, but it's miserable here. It's been raining. Feels like days. I think it has been days actually. Hope you're all okay and doing all right out there. I've got a story for you. And I've seen this on a couple of things. I've seen it on True Crime Daily, and also Murder Court on CCTV. Both very good shows. Little bit of differences between them. So I have looked at other sources as well. But this one, I thought I've got to share this straight away. Have to. And it's the story of Jas Whitehead, and she's got twin daughters, Tas and Jas. So basically, Jas Whitehead was born on the 18th of April 1975. And Nikki, she didn't have a great start to begin with. It said she was born in prison. Her mum was in prison for drug charges. So Nikki went to live with her grandmother. Her grandmother's called Della Fraser. Fraser. I think it's Fraser. But she went to live with her grandmother. Now, I think from what I can tell, Nikki was a little bit of a wild one in her teenage years, and she could kind of come and go as she pleased from her grandmother's home. So when Nikki was 17, she got pregnant, and as she turned 18, so on the 27th of November 93, Nikki gave birth to twin girls, and she called them Jasmia and Tasmia, obviously Whitehead. And you should see the pictures of these girls. Absolutely beautiful girls. They were called Tas and Jas, and just gorgeous girls. And they lived with Nikki's grandmother still, Della, so obviously the girl's great grandmother. And it said that Nikki just wanted the girls to have the life she never had. She had them in dance class, she had them in the Girl Scouts, they were always immaculate, hair always done perfectly, and you can see that in the photos. They just look just such happy little girls. It said she just wanted everything that she didn't have. Now, Nikki, at 25, she meets a man called Robert Head, and he's a truck driver. Nice guy, and her and the girls move in with him. But the girls still spend a lot of time with their great grandmother as well. And they're kind of split between the two houses. Now, it's said that as the girls are getting older, as you would imagine, as kids are getting into their teenage years, Nikki's getting a little bit harder on them. And it's understandable, because you can imagine having teenagers. Imagine having two teenagers at the same time, same age. And yeah, Nikki she's kind of putting her foot down a little bit more. So when the girls turned 13, Nikki, she wanted them with her full time. And I think Robert's home, where Nikki and the girls lived, was about 20 miles from the grandmother. Now, the girls weren't happy about this. They weren't happy about the situation. The grandmother, just like with Nikki, was quite easygoing. The girls could kind of get away with what they wanted to there, and Nikki wasn't having that. Now, the girls, let it be said, were on the honour roll. They were A+ students. Very, very intelligent girls. Lots of extracurricular activities. Just real popular. Just so much going for them. They had dreams of going to Harvard, and everything was there for them. And even though they were with Nikki most of the time, they'd still go off to their great grandmother, obviously. And it was creating a bit of a conflict, because Nikki was getting stricter with the girls going out as the girls turned 14. Now, by this point, the girls had started, boys had come into play. As any of us, you know, regardless of whether it's girls or boys, you know, that teenage stage, it's the be all and end all. And that's what she was finding with the girls. And there's actually a 911 call when I think it's Jas was 14, and Nikki had woke up and Jas wasn't in the house. And you hear this frantic phone call from Nikki, just saying she's woke up, her daughter's not there. She knew where she'd gone, I think. Like, she knew she kind of gone off to meet her boyfriend. I think what Jas was hoping she could get back before Nikki noticed. And basically Nikki was like, I'm taking your phone. That's it. And a fight started with Nikki and the girls. And the police are called, and you actually see, this is Crime Watch Daily, I saw this, one of the police women who were called, she said she turned up and she said it was Nikki. She looked quite scared of the girls. I mean, they're only 14, but she says, you know, that they've gone for her. You know, I don't know how you would, especially when you've given them everything. And the policewoman says she had a look around the girl's bedroom, brand name clothes in the wardrobe, boxes and boxes of shoes, you know, just bedrooms that were immaculate, you know, and the girls themselves, like I say, very well turned out. And she said you could see these girls really didn't want for anything. And so everything calmed down. She said she left, the policewoman, she said, but she had a really uneasy feeling when she left. And sure enough, about 3 minutes later, there's another phone call to the police. So she goes back. And when she goes back, Nikki said that as soon as she'd left, the girls had attacked her. When she spoke to the girls, they said complete opposite, that when she'd left, that Nikki had attacked them. She said, but Nikki had marks on her, whereas the girls didn't. She said Nikki looked genuinely scared, whereas the girls were very calm, very sweet. And she said it just left her with like a really, really uneasy feeling. Now, as time's going on, the battle is getting more and more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just getting worse. It's just getting worse every single day in this household as the girls are getting older. And all it is Nikki's just she just wants them to have a good life. She doesn't want them, I don't know, maybe getting pregnant early as she had, you know, hanging around with bad groups. She just wanted them to fulfill that dream of going to Harvard, you know, staying on the straight and narrow, keeping their grades up. She just wanted the best for them. Every source that I've looked at, it just says that she doted on these girls. They were everything to her. Now, where are we? On the 13th of January 2010, now the girls are 16 and Nikki's 34. The girls come home from school as a normal day and walk in, and when they walk in, first thing they notice is blood everywhere. Absolutely everywhere, in the living room, in the hallway. It's a really bad scene that they've walked into. And again, I think it was Jas. She follows the hallway and she goes into the bathroom. And Nikki is dead in the bath, covered in blood. And the girls just go running, screaming out onto the street, and there just happens to be a patrol police car driving past, and hysterical. They obviously stop this police car, and the policeman comes in, you know, calls everyone, because he said he's actually on the other show, The Murder on Cctv. He said it's, to this day, the worst crime scene he's ever walked into. And for these two girls 16 years old to have walked into that and to have seen their mum. His heart broke for these girls. Now, you see CCTV, well, not CCTV, camera footage of within the police station, and the girls are brought in, and Tas is just crying her eyes out, just begging. She wants to see her nan, crying about her mum. Jas, it's very sweet, leans in and gives her a kiss on her cheek. And as you're watching it, you're just like, your heart breaks watching it. You're just like, not only do they know that their mum is dead, they've seen how she died, and how just disturbing it was. And you just think, how are they going to come back from something like this? And so the police talk to Tas and Jas and just want to know anything they can about Nikki and her life, and they don't want to push them, but they obviously need help in finding out what's happened. And both Tas and Jas say that although their mum had been with Robert, the truck driver, for 9 years, I think by then. She'd met me in... No, 9 years. When did they meet? They met... I'm ever so sorry. I've completely lost my... 2000? Yes? No. I think it's 9 years. I think they've been together 9 years. I'm ever so sorry about that. I've completely lost my dates there. But they'd been together a long time, Nikki and Robert. But the girls say that their mum was actually seeing somebody else, a gentleman by the name of Joe Carter. Now, the police are like, right, there's something really not right here. So they go out to find Joe Carter, and they need to find Robert Head. Now, it turns out that Robert, a long-distance truck driver, like I say, lorry driver, he'd gone out on the road that morning. Doesn't look good, does he? And when the girls were asked what time they left, they said they left at, I think it was 7:30 in the morning. They'd missed their school bus though, and they had to walk to school, but they said, we did make it on time, went to all our classes and obviously came home. When they're looking for Robert's left that morning, but he's not answering his phone. They can't get in touch with Robert. Alarm bells. The girls said that Robert was aware of Joe. He'd found out about him. So it doesn't really look good for Robert at all. They find Joe and ask him, and he looked genuinely shocked. He'd said when he found out about Nikki, he looked genuinely shocked. He looked genuinely upset. But he said that he hadn't seen Nikki in, I think it was 2 weeks. And the last time he'd seen her, she'd come to his apartment. And basically he said he finished it. It just wasn't going anywhere. And she'd been really upset, stormed out, and he hadn't seen her again since. So the police are like, There is CCTV of Joe's apartment. So they ask him, well, what time did she turn up? And he says she turned up at 10:30 at night. She'd left by 11. And when they checked the CCTV footage of Joe's apartment building, sure enough, there's Nikki walking in at I think it was 10:31. And there she is. You can see her storming out. Look, this isn't reconstruction. You actually see Nikki herself storming out of the apartment. Just like he said, half an hour later, like he said, just gone 11. And, he had an alibi. So that was Joe. They're still looking for Robert. And eventually, they get in touch with him. And he said that his phone had lost signal. He was quite far away. What had happened. And again, when he was told, the policeman on the other end of the phone says he sounded, again, genuinely shocked, which a lot, as we know, some murderers, they're very good at acting, and he seemed genuinely shocked. When they checked his GPS to find out where he was, I mean, he was hundreds of miles away, and his truck, it showed the you know, where he had to go, and he'd been on that route. So they were like, well, someone else could have been driving it. So they get CCTV footage of a like a fuel station he said he'd been at a certain time. It's all very clever the way they did it. They found the camera footage. You get to see it on the show. And what they do is that they pause it, and then they say, right, when it shows him getting out of his cab, we need to freeze frame the photo. Sure enough, shows Robert getting out of the cab, freeze framing, it's him. There's absolutely no way that this man had anything to do with what happened with Nikki. And both men were genuinely really upset with what had happened. Not just the fact that Nikki had died, the fact that she'd been murdered. And everyone was just broken-hearted because this woman, she was just trying to make a better life for herself, for her and the girls. That's all she was doing. Now, her girls, it starts to come out that there was a little bit of friction between Nikki and her girls, and that they were going through their teenage angst stage and, you know, were getting a bit rebellious. Then the police heard about, obviously, calls to the house, and Nikki's, you know, saying that the girls had been kind of attacking her. So they start looking at the girls a little bit more. Now, when they're looking at where the house is, it's so clever. When they're looking at Nikki's house, and well, Robert's house and the girls, they're looking for any CCTV footage they can find, because they've come up against a brick wall. Joe's got an alibi. Robert's got an alibi. They're starting to, and the more time that's going by, obviously the harder it's going to get to find out what happened. So they send, you know, the, you know, when they can spray the luminol, those people. I've got a complete brain block today. I'm so sorry. I know exactly the people I'm thinking of. You're probably shouting at me through the screen now. The, not the DNA people, they spray the luminol, and luminol, obviously, as we know, if there's any blood that's being cleaned up anywhere, if you spray this and then shine ultraviolet light on it, is it ultraviolet light? It will show up where blood has been anywhere, like CSI type people. Is that right? And so he sent, you know, the detective working on the case sends them back into the home. And they're also looking at CCTV footage from around the area. Now, there's a fuel station not far from Nikki's house. And they ask for footage. And they're just looking, they're just having a look to see is there anyone suspicious around the area. It's a gated community. You know, anyone looking like they shouldn't be there. And as they're looking at this footage, they notice a car's pulled up, and it's a very distinctive car. It's got a different colour bonnet and bumper. I think it's blue to the rest of the car. So it's quite a distinctive car. And coming into focus is Tas and Jas. The only problem with the girls coming into focus, now you remember they said they left at about 7:30 in the morning. They'd missed their school bus, so they were walking to school, but they'd made it in time for their classes. This is what they'd said. Now, the CCTV footage from the fuel station showed that at 9:30, there are the girls, not far from their home, walking towards this car. You see them go up to the man in the car, say something, and get into the car. And the police are like, we need to find this guy. So they look at the registration, find the guy, And he says, look, he says, I was there, I was getting fuel. 2 young girls came up to me. They said they were running late for school and could I take them? I was just being kind and that's what I did. The police found it very hard to believe that an older guy would have 2 16-year-old, very pretty girls coming up asking for a lift, and he simply dropped them off at school. They found it a little bit far-fetched, but they went to the school, and the school had very, very good CCTV cameras everywhere. So they asked the school to pick up, and he said he dropped them off about 10:30 into the school. So they start looking at the cameras and they say, right, we need to look at the car park from this time. And there it is. There's the man's car pulling up and the girls getting out. They then cut to the entrance of the school. There's the girls walking in. Not a care in the world. And I think by this point it's something like 11:15. Why were they lying? Why did they lie? You know, and the policeman who had been looking at, obviously, Robert, Joe, the man who gave them the lift, they're mortified because they're like, is this going to be what we think it's going to be? Now, they bring the girls in to find out why they were lying, why they've been lying. And what they noticed, and they noticed the first time when the girls had been brought in, is they had gloves on and their coats on, even though it was said it was quite warm in the police station. And they were still sticking to what they were saying. But when they were approached with, we know you're lying, we know what time you actually got into school, you know, they were like, well, we woke up late. You know, Mum wasn't really happy about it, but that's it. That's all it was. And they're like, well, why did you lie? You know, it doesn't quite piece together very well. So they separate the girls and they put one, you know, kind of a waiting room and interview the one and then switch them. And even doing that, they're still kind of sticking to it. They notice that, I think it's Jas. Jas seems to be, from what I've seen, I could be wrong, but she seems to be the very, although they're both intelligent, just maybe the leader of the two. And you see her in a room looking straight at the camera and saying something like, you know, I miss my mum. All very, very sweet, very conniving, if you like. And eventually they get the girls to take off their gloves and take off their coats, and on their hands, and you see the pictures of it, you can see it online, there's bite marks, there's scratches, you know. And when asked about it, Tas says, oh, I was fighting her on about Jas. Now what the police noticed, that the bite mark on Tas, it was very distinctive, and it showed that the person who bit her had a gap in their front teeth, and Jas didn't have a gap, but Nikki did. And you see the photos of Nikki, and she's got quite a distinctive gap in her teeth. So the worst possible scenario is starting to become a reality to the police at this moment in time, and they're just gobsmacked. They're just thinking, is it the girls who did it? Now, remember I says that they were back at the house looking for further evidence. So they started to notice that the walls looked quite clean, and they put the luminol on and there was blood everywhere, even though there'd been blood all over the carpet. You could see where Nikki had been dragged from the living room and put in the bathtub. There was blood that had been cleaned. So you can imagine just how bad this scene was. Now, on on that date, May 2010, both girls are charged with Nikki's murder. They plead not guilty. They're saying everywhere. their attitudes change very quickly. I will let you know that. From these sweet girls that I was telling you about, you see their interviews and they switch. You hear them in the back of the police car when they've been arrested, ranting and raving, calling the police for every name under the sun. A complete switch round from this front that had been put on of these, these heartbroken girls who lost their mum and what are we going to do, to just these absolutely complete polar opposite personalities of just utter, just anger and disgust that they've dared been arrested. Now, like I said, they pled not guilty. They swore they had nothing to do with it until January 2014. Now, this is they've been in prison, awaiting the trial. Now, I think it wasn't for their mum. It wasn't for their their great nan. It wasn't for anyone but themselves. They both pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter. And it comes out what actually happened that morning. Now, it's said that the night before, the two girls, this is going to blow your brain. The two girls had gone to bed quite late. So they'd woke up late in the morning. They'd woke up late for school. And Nikki wasn't happy with it, as any parent wouldn't be. And she wanted Jazzy's phone. You know what it's like to a teenager. The phone's the lifeline. You take that and it's utter devastation. And a battle started with Nikki taking his phone. And it said that Tas walked up behind Nikki and hit her over the head with a vase. And that's where it started. Now, Nikki fought for her life against those girls, but it said that because they were her daughters. These girls are tiny as well, let me just say. Very petite, tiny girls. And it's said that maybe she didn't want to go full force, even if it meant trying to live. She didn't want to hurt the girls with her fighting back. And Jas got a knife and began stabbing her mum on the floor. And Nikki did fight. She did try. And it said that she made it out the house to a neighbour's house, where blood at a later stage was found on the door. It said that she made it there. When the police spoke to that neighbour later on, he said he'd been in bed, he heard the door knock, but he went back to sleep. And it said that they dragged her back. That's their mum. They dragged her back inside the house and carried on. Nikki was actually stabbed. Now, I've had a few sources on this, and the amount of times Nikki was stabbed has varied on these sources. So what I'm going to tell you is the variation. It's between 50 and 80 times. So let's just go with the low end of that, shall we? 50 times. That was their mum. She was stabbed so hard that her spinal cord at the top of her neck was severed. It was all around her head, her neck. They just didn't stop. Then they dragged her into the bathroom. She was still alive. And they left her in the bath to die. Got ready. Gave it a bit of a clean on the walls. And left for school. And then the footage that you see of them going up to the guy and asking for the lift, this is after they've murdered their mum. Because she took her phone. Oh, I mean, I've done matricide stories before of the girl who, her and her boyfriend killed her mum, murdered by my daughter, I think it was. And that was over the mum getting involved in a relationship. This was because she wanted the best for them, and they were late for school because they stayed up too late. It seems just such a standard argument that you imagine 99% of parents will have with their children as they hit teenager. The police actually found a diary in, again, Jas's room. And it's got both of them writing in it. It's like one would write something, the other one would come along and write something. It was just like, yeah, we need to do this. She's just, I want to go back to Della's, their great-grandmother. And just basically plotting what they were going to do to the mum. So, they knew what they were going to do. It wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't spur of the moment. It was just, that was the right time for them. Like I say, they pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and they were both given 30 years. They're in separate prisons in Georgia and their release date is in 2040. Now, Jas, it was the first graduation in that particular prison in Georgia, and she graduated and earned a diploma at 21. And at the moment, within the prison, she works as a teacher's aide. Now, Della, the great-grandmother and grandmother of Nikki, actually went to that graduation of Jas. And she's there on camera, beaming with pride. And Jas is there smiling from ear to ear at graduating. And, she wore the cap and gown. And you're like, is it me? Is it? One of the police on one of the shows said, because they were so young, there is a chance of rehabilitation. Now, that's Jas. Tas, although she's in a different prison, there hasn't been a lot mentioned about her. So I'm assuming maybe she hasn't gone on to try and get her diploma, try and graduate. It doesn't say a lot about Tas. But I just don't know what to make of this story. I just think she didn't beat them. She didn't abuse them. She just wanted the best for them. And because she wouldn't let them go and live with their great-grandmother, where they'd have got an easier ride and been able to go out and meet boys and everything else, because she decided to, Nikki had started putting her foot down and saying, no, come on, we've got to focus. This is where we're going. I need your focus to stay on your studies. And that cost her life. It was just so many twists and turns in the story. And I just thought, when I seen the footage of them walking along the fuel station and going up to that guy to ask for the lift for school, I just thought, oh my God, it's them. It was them. And they just look so sweet. Like I say, they're so tiny. You just don't know, do you? And you genuinely don't. So, yeah, that's the story of Tas and Jas Whitehead. And I just don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about this one. It's they are very young. I presume they can be rehabilitated, but it doesn't. You killed your mom. Your mom. She gave you life, and you took hers away. I'm going to keep an eye on it, to say, will they do the full 30 years? I mean, it's America, they're quite strict, but I will keep an eye on this one. But I just wanted to share it with you because it just kind of, boom, that one did. And yeah, thank you again for joining me. And if you do want to have a look, True Crime Daily or Murder Caught on CCTV. And thank you so much for joining me again. Thank you to my new subscribers and all my comments. I really do appreciate all of them. And if you do want to subscribe, I'd appreciate that too. Thank you all so much. Take care and I'll see you soon. Thank you.